If you live in Georgia long enough, you hear stories about Lake Lanier. Most people say them like jokes at first, that the lake is cursed, that it takes people, that some parts of the water don't give back what they swallow. I never believed any of that. I'm a freelance news stringer based outside Atlanta, and every summer I end up covering the same stories out there. Drunk boaters, missing swimmers, overturned jet skis, bodies recovered after midnight searches. It's tragic, but usually simple. Somebody makes one bad decision, and the lake does the rest. That's exactly what I thought this was. The missing man's name was Ethan Mercer, 34 years old, married, no kids, worked in commercial HVAC. According to his wife, he liked to take his fishing boat out late because the water was quieter after dark. On a Thursday night in July, he launched from a small public ramp on the south side of the lake and never came back. By morning, his aluminum fishing boat was found drifting near a section the locals called the Old Basin. The outboard motor was off. His tackle box was open. His wallet sat untouched under the console. His truck was still in the parking lot. But Ethan was gone. No blood, no sign of a struggle, no life jacket, no phone. The sheriff's office called it an active recovery operation, which is the polite way of saying they believed he was already dead. By the time I got there, the search had been going on for almost 3 days. The shoreline was packed with emergency vehicles. You had sheriff's deputies, DNR boats, volunteer divers, sonar technicians, and family members standing behind the tape, staring out at the water like they could force it to answer them. The thing about Lake Lanier is that it looks peaceful even when it isn't. That morning, the surface was flat as dark glass. Houseboats drifted farther north. Jet skis buzzed in the distance. Sunlight glittered off the coves like it was trying to make the whole place look harmless. But now, near the search zone, nobody smiled. Nobody talked above a whisper. I introduced myself to Sheriff Neal, who'd dealt with me before. He was a broad, sunburned man in his late 50s, the kind who looked like he'd spent more of his life outdoors than inside a building. He gave me the same answer he gave every reporter. Adult male presumed overboard. Search is ongoing. Family has been notified. We'll release more when we have it. I asked if there was any reason to suspect foul play. He looked past me at the water before answering. "Out here," he said, "you don't need foul play for people to vanish." That should have been the quote I built the story around. It should have been another tragic local segment, 90 seconds long, buried between weather and traffic. Then the 911 call came in. Not while I was there, not in daylight. It happened at 2:06 the next morning, and I only found out because one of the dispatchers was a friend of a friend who owed somebody a favor. He called me before sunrise and said, "Get to the sheriff's office. Something happened." When I arrived, the whole place felt wrong. Nobody was moving with the usual routine urgency. They were standing in clusters, talking low, faces drawn tight. Deputies who normally brushed past reporters without even looking at us were suddenly avoiding eye contact. Sheriff Neal eventually stepped outside to make a statement, but before he did, I caught a glimpse of him through the glass doors. He looked scared. Not stressed, not exhausted. Scared. He said that overnight dispatch had received a distress call believed to be connected to the Ethan Mercer case. He did not take questions. That was all he'd officially give us. But unofficially, the audio spread through that building in less than an hour. I heard it from a deputy who should not have played it for me. There was a burst of static first, then splashing, soft, irregular, like water slapping against concrete in a closed space. Then the operator came on. 1-1, what's your emergency? For about 3 seconds, there was only breathing. Wet breathing. Not normal gasping, not someone out of breath. It sounded like a man trying to inhale through water. Then a voice came through, weak and shaking. "I'm under the old road." There was a pause, The operator asked him to repeat himself. The man coughed hard. I could hear liquid in his throat. Then he said very clearly, "Tell them, don't let the girl in red get on the boat." The line went dead. I asked the deputy whose voice it was, already knowing the answer. He swallowed and said, "His wife identified it. First try." Ethan Mercer had been missing for 3 days. The call had pinged from inside the same section of Lake Lanier they'd already searched. That was when things stopped feeling like a recovery and started feeling like an investigation. By noon, the South Basin was locked down tighter than before. Divers were sent back in with more equipment. Sonar teams redrew their grid patterns. A homicide investigator got assigned, which was never publicly announced. Ethan's wife was brought in for a second interview. They pulled his call records, financials, GPS data, marina footage, everything. And then the old road came up. That's when the old records started surfacing. At first, it didn't seem connected. Just fragments, county archives, faded reports, things no one had looked at in decades. Back in the 1950s, before the lake existed, that entire basin had been a network of roads and small communities. One report mentioned a late-night accident during heavy rain. A small transport vehicle, possibly a school route, lost control and slipped off the road. The exact location was never clearly marked. Some records were incomplete, others were missing entirely. Officially, it was dismissed as a documentation error during the flooding process. But there was one detail that kept showing up: witness statements. Not about the crash itself, but about what people claimed to see near the water in the days after. A figure, small, still, standing near the roadside at night. Some described it as a child waiting for help. Others said it was already in the water, before the accident even happened. And in more than one account, the same detail appeared. A red coat, bright enough to be seen in the dark, long before the lake ever existed. A retired county engineer told investigators that before the lake existed, entire communities had been flooded to create it. Roads, foundations, stairs, tree lines, even parts of small bridges had gone under. Most of that was common knowledge. But one submerged county road in that basin had a reputation. Old maps showed it cutting through what was now 30 to 40 feet of dark water before disappearing beneath silt and collapsed debris. Divers hated that area. The visibility was terrible, and the concrete edges created pockets where bodies and wreckage could snag and vanish. The circuit teams focused there. That afternoon, I watched a sonar operator stare at his screen for nearly 20 minutes without blinking. He finally waved Sheriff Neal over. Something was down there, pressed against what looked like a broken slab or culvert under the roadbed. Every time they tried to lock onto it, the shape seemed to drift. Not far, just enough to make the techs argue with each other. One of them finally muttered, "That's not how a body moves." Nobody responded. Just before sunset, one of the divers came up too fast and had to be helped onto the deck. He tore off his mask, looked like he was about to throw up, and kept saying, "There's somebody standing down there." The deputies around him went dead still. Sheriff Neal snapped, "What did you see?" The diver stared at the floor of the boat for a long time before answering. "I saw a child," he said, "on the road." That statement never made it into any official report. The next morning, they found Ethan. He was wedged beneath a collapsed section of concrete in what used to be a drainage culvert under the old road. Fishing line had wrapped around one wrist and part of the motor housing, probably pinning him after he went in. The recovery should have ended the mystery. Instead, it made it worse. The autopsy said drowning, but there were details the sheriff's office refused to discuss publicly. A source inside told me Ethan's lungs contained less water than expected. There were abrasions on his palms, as if he'd been dragging himself over rough stone. And his right hand had been clenched so tightly they had to work his fingers open one by one at the morgue. Inside his hand was a small, rusted metal token. At first, they thought it was a fishing weight or part of old debris, but when it was cleaned, lettering appeared on one side. Student Route 4. The style looked decades old. Nobody could explain why a school transit token would be at the bottom of that section of lake. Then Ethan's phone turned up. Not in his boat, not in his truck. A diver found it wedged in muck near the same submerged roadway. The phone should have been dead beyond recovery, but the data lab managed to pull one damaged video file from it. I didn't just hear about that one. I saw it. Ethan is on the boat, filming the shoreline at night. The video shakes as he zooms in across black water toward a narrow strip of land. The only sounds are insects, distant ripples, and Ethan breathing harder with each second. Then he says, "Why is there a kid out there?" A small figure is standing at the end of the dock. At least, that's what it looks like at first. A little girl, maybe 8 or 9, thin, still. She's wearing a red raincoat. No one else is around. Ethan calls out, asking if she's okay. The camera dips for half a second. When it comes back up, the dock is empty. Then the phone whips around toward the rear of the boat, and she's standing there, on the deck behind him. So close, the camera can't even focus on her face. Ethan screams. The phone slips. There's a burst of static, a hard impact, then darkness and splashing. That was the last image ever recorded on his phone. Police checked every marina camera within range. No child in red. No missing child report that matched. No witness who'd seen anyone near the launch ramp that night. Officially, the case remained a drowning. Unofficially, nobody who worked it believed that was the whole story. A week later, I got one more leak from the dispatch center. Another 911 call had come in from the lake. Same general area, same line distortion, same sound of water moving in an enclosed space. The operator answered, asked the caller to identify himself. At first, there was nothing but breathing. Then a male voice said quietly, "Not Ethan." The dispatcher asked what he meant. For a second, it sounded like the caller was crying. Then more voices came on. Not one, not two, dozens. Children whispering over each other so softly it took me 3 listens to make out the words. "Tell them not to stop for us." The recording ended there. No traceable subscriber, no prank suspect, no explanation. I never aired most of this. My editor wouldn't touch it without proof solid enough to survive a lawsuit. And honestly, part of me was relieved. Some stories feel wrong once you say them out loud, like you're helping them spread. But I still think about Lake Lanier whenever summer comes around. I think about the old roads down there and the things that used to be above water. I think about Ethan Mercer hearing a child call to him from the dark. And I think about that final warning. Because if you spend enough time around cops, dispatchers, and recovery divers, you learn there are 2 kinds of fear. There's the fear people feel when they don't know what happened, and there's the fear they feel when they do know what happened, but nobody will ever believe them. So if you're ever out on Lake Lanier after dark, and the water goes quiet, and you see someone standing alone near the shore, a little girl in red, waving for help, whatever you do not turn the boat toward her, because some things in that lake aren't trying to be rescued.